What's going on, guys? Max here today, and today I'm reacting to the 3 Disturbing True Snapchat Stories Volume 2 by Mr. Nightmare. I actually don't have a Snapchat, so I don't really relate to any of these stories, but if I can get 20 subscribers, I will get a Snapchat. Also, before we start, I just want to give a shout out to the YouTuber Uptown Pappy. I've been having some trouble with making custom zombie maps, and he's been really helpful. So anyway, shout out to him. Sunman 95, Crystal Connors, and Ito J. Cool, thanks guys.
It was 2015. My little sister and I, along with a few of her friends, were going camping in a forest in Maine. I couldn't tell you the name of it. She wanted me to go because I'm older and more experienced with camping. But was it weird camping with a bunch of 14-year-old girls? Yes. I won't share my sister's name, but her friends were Casey, Barbara, and Lexi. My sister insisted I slept in a separate tent than her and her friends, and I was okay with that. So we brought 2 tents. Along with that, I packed the usual camping supplies: food, water, tools, and in my case, a rifle. I always take a gun with me while camping, just because I'm a paranoid guy. And I always want to feel protected while in the
No, you're a grand guy.
middle of the woods at night. After a pretty long day, I helped a girl set up their tents. And then I worked on mine alone as they were all sitting in theirs, gossiping or talking about whatever 14-year-old girls talk about. When I finished, I put the fire out. Being the older brother, I of course felt responsible for my sister and her friends, so I moved the tent really close to theirs, turned on my reading light, and continued where I left off in the book I was reading. The chattering of the girls in the next tent over was a bit distracting. At one point I heard them talking about a certain boy. Then the conversation switched to Snapchat. I heard Casey mention that she didn't have Lexi on Snapchat and asked for her username. I really didn't mean to eavesdrop, but they were speaking pretty loud. Lexi gave Casey her snap, and about 5 to 10 minutes later, Lexi mentioned in a confused voice that some random person added her on Snapchat. I raised my head from my book a bit as my interest in what was being said suddenly increased. The other girls told Lexi to add the person to see who it was. A few seconds later, they were going on about how the
Why in God's name would you do that? Why would you care? If someone just randomly added you, why would you care who it is?
person's Snapchat score was so low, only like 7. I was really paying attention now. Apparently the person sent a message saying, "Hi, send me a pic." And then the 4 of them left. At this moment they were kind of whispering and giggling, so I couldn't really hear what was said. But after they all erupted in laughter, I could only guess they sent some kind of funny picture. After more silence, I got chills when I heard all of them scream. I grabbed my gun and ran outside to their tent. My sister screamed that there's someone outside of the tent. I shot the gun into the air 3 times as a warning, yelling into the woods at the same time. I then crawled into their tent where my sister hugged me. I of course asked what happened, pretending like I didn't already know half of it from listening to their conversation, and they explained everything. Lexi added the random person back, who then sent her the message mentioned earlier. As I suspected, she sent back an ugly group shot with her friends. The person then sent back a picture in response. It was a selfie picture of what they described as an old creepy dude, smiling at the camera, standing right in front of their tent.
Dude, that would be scary.
It gave me chills right down to the bone listening to their story. I was freaked out myself. They all wanted me to sleep in the tent with them that night, so I did. The next morning we cut the trip short.
Why would you stay there? Get the hell out of there.
And went straight for the car. What could have been a great weekend memory with my sister turned into the biggest nightmare of both of our lives. I just recently got into the whole Snapchat thing. My friends urged me to get it since everyone else my age has one. I got into the groove of it pretty quickly, and within a week my score
I'm that kid too.
Was already 1,000. One day while shopping, I took a picture of a pair of shoes that I knew one of my friends really liked and sent it to her on Snapchat. She opened it after a few minutes, but didn't reply back. I sent her a chat asking, "What do you think?" She opened this one much quicker, but didn't reply. I put on a sad face and took a selfie, captioned the picture, "What's up, why aren't you answering?" and sent it. She opened it immediately, this time replying in the chat, "Where are you?" I responded saying, "Home." Her Bitmoji was appearing in the chat, indicating she had the chat box opened. She replied saying, "Where is home?" I said, "What do you mean?" Then she said, "What is your address?" It was at that moment I knew something was up. I closed the chat box and drove over to my friend's house. Apparently she had lost her phone the previous day. She explained everything to me. I left after talking for a few minutes to go home. I pulled up to my house, and becoming a bit paranoid now, just looked around to make sure I wasn't followed or anything. Both of my parents were out of town, and my brother was out of state, so I was home alone for the night. That night when I was laying in bed checking my Insta and Snap before going to sleep, I remembered I could just check where my friend's Bitmoji was on the map to track the thief. So I opened up the Snap map. Her Bitmoji was right on top of mine, on top of my house. I dove to turn off my lamp and shut the blind. The fear made me paranoid. I started to question whether I locked the front door or even the back door. But that didn't matter, because when I heard sounds coming from downstairs, below my room, I knew someone was in the house. I tiptoed to my bedroom door to lock it, then called the police. The operator asked me to stay on the line with them until the police arrived. When they arrived, it turned out nobody was in the house. It was just my paranoia playing tricks on me. We found my friend's phone in the backyard, hidden under a bush, screen still on with the battery in the 60% range, meaning he couldn't have been gone for too long. The next day, I returned the phone to my friend, and my parents came home, so I didn't feel scared anymore. I will, however, keep my location private on Snapchat from now on, and I recommend you do the same.
Why would you have that public? That's stupid. Hello?
This happened a week ago. Up until a few days ago, I went to a small, local gym in my now previous New Jersey town called Black Bear Fitness. One day, I had the misfortune of running into some skinny, awkward, yet creepy-looking kid, probably 18 years old.
Yeah, that's a nice gym.
He didn't look like he belonged in a gym at all. I had headphones in and I was doing my set when I heard him saying something to me, but it was muffled by the music. I was already annoyed with this kid, given that he was breaking an unwritten rule of the gym. Don't try to talk to somebody when they're doing their sets. I took my time finishing my set, and then took my headphones out to ask if he needed something. Then he started acting like I looked familiar, but right away I knew this kid was just trying some pathetic attempt at making friends. I assured him I didn't, but the kid wouldn't stop talking to me. I'll skip most of the conversation, but eventually he actually asked me for my Instagram and Snapchat, weirdly enough, and for whatever reason I gave them to him. Instead of just saying something like, "Buddy, I'm trying to work out," or "I don't have social media." After I gave him my Snapchat and Instagram, however, I did kind of urge him to let me resume my workout. He finally seemed to get the message and walked away. Not without saying bye like 3 times though. That night I got a snap on my phone saying "from Sean." I immediately sighed and said, "Oh no." Just wondering why the hell the kid would snap me. I opened the snap, and the kid was in a creepy, weird pose, face way too close to the camera, with his head resting in his hand and a half smile on his face. The text over the picture was "Hey" with 2 Y's. I muttered the words, "What the fuck?" For the record, I'm a guy, which made this even more weird. My thought process was, I've had enough of this loser already. I'm gonna remove him and make it clear I don't want to talk if I see him at the gym again. And so I did. I removed him minutes after he sent that snap.
Good.
I'm sure not even a minute later, again a message popped up on my phone, saying "Snapchat from Sean."
What?
I waited a few minutes before opening it. This one was even creepier. Now the kid was sitting up on his bed. No smile, more of a surprised, angry expression. The text over the image said, "Why did you remove me?" Now I went as far as to block him, meaning he couldn't snap me anymore. And that was that. I threw my phone on the desk and sighed out of relief. Half an hour later, my phone goes off, saying Sean added you as a friend, and then Snapchat from Sean.
What?
He actually made a new account. I opened the snap and felt my heart drop. It was a picture of my front lawn. The text over it, "Answer me, bitch." The first thing I could think of was, how did he find my address? Then I realized, Snapchat made that new map feature that lets you see where your friends are. Somehow I had the
Why the hell would you do that? That's so stupid.
balls to open the window to see outside. It was clear out there. I shut the window and the blinds and started considering calling 911.
Considering.
It was the sound of taps on the window. I took a deep breath, and with one swift motion, I pulled up the blind and the window at the same time and pulled the kid into my room by his neck. I punched him in the face a few times before he was out cold. Now I called 911. By the time they arrived, he was awake, cursing me out, promising he'd be back and kill me. The cops heard it all. I didn't even have to make a case. The kid was an idiot. Luckily, the timing of this worked out well, because I just moved a couple days ago out of state. Only thing that worries me, I don't want to have to make a new Snapchat account, but anytime somebody new adds me on the app, I'll never know if it's secretly that Sean kid again.
That's a good point. First-hand stories were nightmares right into reality. Okay, well that must have been... It must have been a lot of work to do that thumbnail, so let's do that. Excellent.
If you're like most people, you've probably at one point had the experience of your alarm clock becoming a part of your dream before waking up. Or perhaps had some other sound, like the TV you left on before falling asleep, influence your dreams. But what would happen if reality influenced your dreams during a nightmare? Well, it would probably only add to the horror. While all of the stories on this list are creepy, some are more unexplainable than others. Here are 5 first-hand stories of people whose nightmares have strangely read into reality. Number 5. This story was submitted to me by Earl Feinhardt. It was a long and stressful day, so falling asleep was easy. I think a dream started to fade in around halfway through the night. It wasn't a pleasant dream. I'll try to describe it the best I could. I was in the woods outside of a giant castle. Everything was black except for the night sky, which had a hint of blue. I remember this horrifying sound coming from inside the castle, as if something were calling me. It's downright disturbing to think about it even now. The sound was some kind of demonic, hellish voice, and it echoed through the woods. I somehow knew it was coming from inside the castle, and yet it sounded as if the source of the sound was a few hundred feet away from me. This was not a lucid dream. I had no conscious control over myself, so I made my way to the castle. There were no doors. It was as if the inside of this castle was also the outside. I don't know how else to describe it. The sound of the demonic voice was no doubt getting louder, and as I walked the open corridors of the castle, the halls started to become more narrow, and I felt myself banging into the walls as I dragged myself along. The sounds of the screaming were coming from beyond a door on my left. I entered, and I swear to God, there was nothing but blackness in the room. And yet, I still felt myself moving closer to the sound. I banged into something, and that's when I woke up, hunched over my 4-year-old son's bed, who was crying and horrified. He had been screaming because he also had a nightmare, and I scared him even more, as he described the way I walked in and then stopped in front of his bed, slowly lowering myself closer to him.
Yeah, man, that's scary as hell.
Number 4. This story was posted by a forum user named Joey Mancuso. I just want to point out before sharing my story that I am an atheist and do not believe in any kinds of miracles, gods, or anything of that sort. However, I still don't know how to explain this. I was having a really disturbing dream. It seemed to be Halloween night, and I was with my friends trick-or-treating. We hit 2
Halloween is the best holiday.
houses. The first one was normal from what I remember. When we rang the doorbell to a second house, the door opened on its own into a darkish blue living room. I stepped inside, and my friends were gone at this point. I looked around the room I was in. The door I had just entered from no longer existed. In fact, the whole room seemed to have rapidly changed appearance, a common occurrence in dreams. After exploring the house, I came to a room upstairs, even though I didn't remember climbing the stairs. On the wall I was facing was a giant framed picture, at least 10 meters long and 20 meters wide. The picture was of my 30-year-old cousin, who I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes were enlarged to an uncomfortable amount, and they followed me everywhere I went. The giant portrait suddenly cracked, and the rusty, scratchy, ear-piercing sound of the giant nails holding the portrait on the wall painfully filled my eardrums. The portrait started to fall off the wall, and I watched, completely frozen, as it fell on top of me. But before it could crush me, I was awake. It was maybe 5 in the morning. Minutes after waking up, my cell phone rang. I picked up. It was my uncle calling to tell me that my cousin had just overdosed on heroin and died. Number 3.
That's weird.
I was having a nightmare that started off with me in my house reading a newspaper. Then the lights went out, and the dream started to focus on my trying to find out why the power was cut. The fuse box was apparently in the basement in this dream, which is, by the way, inaccurate to real life. I went down to the basement with a flashlight and opened up the fuse box. There was a sticky note inside, saying, "Go back upstairs to the red room." While still in the basement, I started to hear a moaning type sound coming from the boiler room/laundry room. My brain knew my childhood fears, and it seemed to be taking advantage of them in this nightmare. The door to the boiler room cracked open, and something poked its head out to look at me.
What were you scared of?
I left the basement after seeing this, following the sticky note's orders. I went upstairs to the second floor of the house, and there was a glowing red door at the end of the hall, a door that doesn't actually exist in my real house. Now, there was a disturbing echoing sound coming from beyond the door, and as I got closer, it became more clear that it was a voice, chanting the number 314, 314. I opened the door, and there was just a chair in the room, facing the wall across from me.
Yeah, that's really weird, because if anyone's seen the, I honestly don't even know the title of my own video. One of the videos I made on the scariest true stories I've heard firsthand, or that were told to me face to face, not like over YouTube and stuff. That's actually very similar to my friend's dad's story. Check out the video. Link it in the description.
The room was as red as the glow that had been illuminating through the door. The voice chanting 314 was clearer now. It was an extremely creepy voice, almost feeling like it was speaking into my ear. I woke up abruptly, with my heart beating somewhat quickly. I grabbed my iPhone that was sitting on the desk next to me to check the time. It was 3:14 a.m. You may think I just saw a clock while half awake or something, but I have no digital clocks in my room. The only clock would be the one on my iPhone that was in the same position as I had left it before going to bed. To this day, I have no idea how my dream knew it was 3:14, or if there was supposed to be some kind of meaning behind it.
It meant he was hungry. 314, 3.14, pi.
Number 2. This one was from an Ask Reddit post. It was a night during the summer 2015. I was high out of my mind after a party. I was fortunate enough to not get caught by my parents as I walked to my room to get straight to bed. I was at the part of my high where I was just exhausted and wanted to get some sleep, and so I fell asleep in probably 10 minutes or less. Have you ever heard about that idea that smoking pot and then going to sleep high alters your dreams or gives you some kind of enhanced dreaming capabilities? Well, after this one, I won't be fighting that theory. I don't remember anything before this dream. It started out with me in the woods in the middle of the night. In real life, you would just be surrounded by trees and the sounds of night critters, nothing special. But being that this was a dream, it was much worse. There were ghostly wind sounds coming from everywhere. Instead of bug noises, there were wolf howls and sounds of footsteps coming from behind me. There was that magically horrifying feeling of a dream that you just can't describe, but it made it so much more than just being trapped in the woods. I found myself running away from the footsteps that were consistently the same distance behind me until reaching a building in the middle of the woods. Of course, I went inside and boarded the door shut with planks that seemed to have come out of nowhere. This dream seemed to have gone on forever, too long to describe it all, but to summarize, I was in that building, which turned out to be a house, and the footsteps that were following me from outside were circling the house. I tried to find a weapon, but the house was almost completely empty. Everything was black and white at this point. While sitting on a couch in the living room, one of the only pieces of furniture there was a shadow that appeared at the window, and shortly after, the figure standing outside knocked on the window. It kept knocking and knocking until I woke up, but the knocking didn't stop. I jumped out of bed when I realized someone was at my window, looking in and knocking. I squealed for my dad, and the figure at the window ran off. I'm still open to the possibility that my high hadn't completely worn off, and that it might have been a partial wake-up hallucination, but it was also so real that, at the same time, I have to believe it actually happened. The sound was real, and the figure at my window was real. My dad and I looked around the property to find no one. He told me I just had a bad dream and to go back to sleep. I hope he was right. Number 1. I was having a horrifying dream, possibly the most disturbing nightmare of my life. I was in my house, or the closest thing to my house that my dream could produce. Ironically enough, I was in bed in this dream, or at least I can only start remembering past the point of my lying in bed. And all of a sudden,
It's like the double.
the sound came from downstairs. I walked downstairs in the dark, not turning on any lights, to where I thought the sound was coming from. I was on my middle floor now. The dream was telling me to go downstairs to my laundry room, and so I did. But as I got there, expecting the noise to be louder and closer, it sounded like it was just as far as before. Now I was going upstairs to the kitchen, and it's strange, outside of every window was complete blackness, not general nighttime darkness. There was nothingness. I think all that existed in this dream was my house. Now my dream started to suggest that the banging sounds were coming from upstairs, so I went back upstairs and was eventually led to the attic door. It was surely beyond that door. I opened it. There was an old woman standing by a bunch of boxes. She was slowly but loudly slamming her hand on one of the boxes, producing an unnatural sound. I tried to quietly step back away from the attic, but the old woman turned around, opened her mouth twice as wide as anyone humanly could, reached out her arms, began to scream, and leaped toward me. That's when I woke up. I thought it was just a horrific dream, but when I heard a bang coming from downstairs, a bang similar to what I heard in my dream, I felt my heart completely drop. On my way downstairs, there was another bang. It was the front door. I got the butcher knife from my knife holder in the kitchen and crouched behind the door. I was waiting for the next time he would pound on the door and I would warn him to go away. I waited for a good minute in silence and finally decided to take a quick look through the window. There was somebody standing in my driveway. I couldn't tell if he was facing me or looking at me or not, but he was surely the one who was pounding on my door at 4 a.m. He walked away down the sidewalk moments after he must have noticed me. The pounding on my door was the kind of pounding you would expect from someone trying to break in a door, not to get a house owner's attention. I thought it was just crazy and horrifying that the pounding and banging from this potential robber or killer didn't wake me up, rather became the key point to a horrifying dream.
Alright. That's it for today, guys. Tomorrow, oh my god. Tomorrow I'll come at you guys with another reaction video. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.